There is a version of you that everyone loves. They love how you never push back, how you smooth things over before anyone asks, how you absorb tension in a room the way a sponge absorbs water. Quietly, completely, without complaint. They love that you are always there, that you never make things difficult, that you say yes with a smile even when something inside you goes very still. And here is what no one tells you about being that person. It is not a gift. It is a wound that learned to perform as a virtue. Niccolò Machiavelli watched courts, kingdoms, and human nature with a coldness that made his contemporaries uncomfortable. He was not interested in who people pretended to be. He was interested in who they actually were when power was in the room. And what he observed again and again, in the corridors of Florence, is in the behavior of princes and their advisers, in the quiet machinery of how people rise and fall, was this. The person who accommodates everyone eventually belongs to no one. The person who cannot disappoint anyone becomes the most convenient person in every room. Not the most respected, the most used. You were not born overly accommodating. You were trained into it. Somewhere early, in a family where love felt conditional, in a classroom where being good meant being quiet, in a friendship that punished you the one time you asked for something, you learned that your safety lived in your usefulness. That conflict was dangerous. That the space between what you wanted and what someone else wanted was a space you should collapse as quickly as possible, and always in their direction. Carl Jung called this the construction of the persona, and the mask we assemble to be acceptable, to be loved, to survive. And the tragedy Jung identified is not that we build the mask, it is that we eventually forget we are wearing it. We begin to believe that the accommodation is us, that the niceness is not strategy, but soul, that to stop being available to everyone would be to become someone cold, someone selfish, someone we would not recognize in the mirror. But what if that mirror has been lying to you? What if the person you are afraid of becoming, the one who says no, who holds space for themselves, who does not collapse at the first sign of someone else's discomfort, is not your worst self? What if that is actually you? Here is where Machiavelli's warning begins. And if you have spent your life being the nice one, the reliable one, as the one who keeps the peace, what he observed is going to land somewhere uncomfortable. Not because it is cruel, because it is precise. Think about that feeling in your chest when your phone vibrates at 9 p.m. You see the name. You know they want something. You feel that immediate physical surge of irritation, that internal no. And then, within seconds, your thumb moves. You type, "Sure, I can help." You hit send. That is the exact moment you lose. It is not just a favor, it is a script. You are playing the role of the available one because you are terrified of the silence that follows a no. You have been conditioned to believe that your worth is tied to your utility. If you are not helping, if you are not smoothing things over, if you are not the emotional sponge for everyone else's mess, who are you? As most people never stop to answer that. They just keep reacting. They keep performing. And the world is happy to let them do it until there is nothing left but a hollow shell of resentment. Now, we need to talk about the villain in this story. And it is not the people asking for your time. It is the invisible psychological pattern you inherited, the good person script, the cultural conditioning that convinced you conflict is failure. That being liked is the same thing as being safe, that your value is a transaction, paid in availability, renewed daily, and never quite fully settled. If you are already feeling the specific relief of having this pattern named accurately, if something in you is recognizing right now that your niceness was not really generosity, but a form of self-erasure, hit the like button. That recognition matters. It is the beginning of something. Machiavelli wrote that a man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good. He was not telling you to be cruel, he was telling you to be armed. The nice person is unarmed. You go into the social world with no edges, no shadow, no capacity for no, and then you wonder why you feel drained. You are not being exploited because the people around you are monsters. You are being exploited because you are predictable. And Machiavelli understood that power, real, sovereign power, comes from being a mystery. When people know exactly how you will react, they own you. When they know you will always say yes, your yes stops meaning anything. It becomes a commodity. It becomes cheap. And here is what is actually happening beneath the surface of chronic niceness. And this is the part that took Jung an entire career to articulate clearly. When you make yourself endlessly available, when you flatten your own needs to fit the shape of what others require, you are not being selfless. You are engaging in a very sophisticated form of control. You are attempting to manage how people feel about you by making yourself impossible to reject. If I never say no, no one can leave. If I never disappoint, no one can be angry. If I keep giving, the relationship stays intact. It feels like generosity. It functions like fear. And the cost is not just your energy, though it is absolutely your energy. The cost is the signal you send to the world about your own worth. Jung spoke about psychic energy as something finite and directional. Every time you respond when you did not want to, every time you stay in a conversation you should have left, every time you hold your tongue about what you actually think to preserve someone else's comfort, you are spending something that does not replenish automatically. You are making a withdrawal from a reserve that has a bottom, and at some point you hit it. You know the feeling. Not anger exactly, not sadness, something flatter than both. A kind of internal grey. The exhaustion that is not about sleep. The growing sense that you give, and somehow there is always more required, and you never quite understand why no amount of accommodation makes anyone finally, fully satisfied. Here is why. Because what you are actually offering is a mirror that never pushes back. And people do not grow in front of mirrors that only reflect what they want to see. They get more demanding. The mirror becomes invisible. You become invisible. Save this video. Not for later in the abstract. For the specific moment, and it will come, when you find yourself about to say yes to something your entire body is saying no to, and you need something to cut through fast. Now I have to be honest with you. This is not a simple switch. There are no 3 easy steps to stop being nice, because this pattern is not a habit. It is wired into your nervous system. Choosing yourself is going to feel like a betrayal at first. It is going to feel cold. You will lie awake wondering if you have become a bad person. That is the price of entry. If you are not willing to feel that guilt, you will never be free. But here is what the path actually looks like. 3 specific shifts in how you move through the world. The first is the law of emotional lag. Most of your problems start because you respond too fast. Someone pokes a wound and you react. Someone asks a favor and you commit before you have even thought. You need to introduce a lag. When the world demands something of you, choose silence first, not as escape, but as a filter. Let the other person sit in the vacuum of your non-response. This is where the manipulation breaks. They are used to controlling you through your impulses. When you do not pulse, they lose the thread. The second is the recognition of the shadow persona. Your mask is the helper. But beneath that mask is a shadow that is furious. It is the part of you that wants to say, "Leave me alone." Yes, every time you perform niceness while feeling resentful, you feed that shadow until it eventually erupts in ways you cannot control. Strategic unavailability is not about being mean. It is about being honest. It is about letting what is real in you finally speak, so the whole person can become whole. The third is the sovereignty of no. A yes has no weight if the person receiving it knows that no was never an option. You think you are giving a gift. You are following a command. To be respected, you must be capable of being dangerous. Not physically dangerous, psychologically dangerous. The danger of your absence. The danger of your withdrawal. The danger of a person who has edges and knows where they are. In a moment, we are going to reach the one specific decision-making model that will stop you from being pulled back into the old pattern. But before we get there, you need to feel the full weight of what has been taken from you. Look at your inner life. You have become an emotional emergency button. People press you when they want relief and put you back on the shelf when they feel better. You are not a person to them in those moments. You are a utility. And the worst part, you have started to believe that this is the only way you can be loved. You think if you stop being useful, you will be forgotten. That fear is the cage. But think about this. Who in your life actually gets angry when you set a limit? It is never the people who love you. It is always the people who were benefiting from you having none. Your unavailability does not push away friends. It only pushes away the arrangements that were never friendship to begin with. Here is the framework. 3 seconds. That is all it takes. The next time you feel the urge to justify yourself, explain yourself, or apologize for a boundary, count to 3. In those 3 seconds, ask one question. Am I saying this because it is true, or because I am afraid of how they will see me if I stay silent? If the answer is the second one, stay silent. Say nothing. Let the silence do the work. That is it. That is the whole tool. Not because it is simple, but because the real obstacle was never knowing what to do. It was tolerating the discomfort of doing it. 3 seconds is long enough to choose yourself. Practice it once, and you will understand what all of this has been building toward. You are going to need that tool. Save this video somewhere you can find it fast, to your watch later, your saved folder, wherever you keep the things you return to. Because the next time that old guilt starts to scream, you will want this close. Now here is where most people stop. They think, once I start saying no, people will finally see my value and treat me better. That is the surface-level hope, and it is partially true. But here is the deeper layer beneath it. Many of them will not. In fact, many of them will leave. They will call you cold. They will say you have changed. They will act as though you have done something wrong. And that is exactly what needs to happen. The goal is not to fix your current relationships. The goal is to see which ones were real. If a relationship requires your constant self-abandonment to survive, then it was not a relationship, it was a transaction. You are not losing people. You are clearing the brush so that something actual can grow in its place. Think about the people in your life who are most consistently available to you. The ones who respond immediately. The ones who never say no. Now ask yourself honestly, how much do you respect them? Not like. Respect. There is a distinction Machiavelli made that most people never examine. What he was describing when he talked about power was not cruelty. It was weight, gravity, the quality a person has when their absence would be felt, when their presence changes something in a room, when their opinion lands differently because you understand, implicitly, that it is not guaranteed. You cannot manufacture that quality through performance, but you destroy it completely by being available for everything, for everyone at all times. If you have been looking for a channel that goes past the surface version of psychology, past the affirmations and the set boundaries advice that never explains why you cannot, this is what it looks like when you go deeper. Subscribe. Because what comes next in this channel goes further than this video had space to go. Here is the insight I want you to carry out of this video. The one worth writing down. The people who respect you most are not the ones who found you most accommodating. They are the ones who once pushed against you and found something solid there. Respect, real respect, not the performance of it, is born at the moment of resistance. When you say something honest that costs you something. When you hold a position under pressure. When you disappoint someone and survive it. When you demonstrate, not through speech but through behavior, that there is a version of you that exists independent of whether anyone approves of it. The world does not respect those who are always there. It respects those who have the courage to be missed. Your absence is the only thing that creates genuine value. When you stop being an open door, you become a destination. People have to earn their way into your presence. And when they have to earn it, for the first time, they begin to actually see you. Send this to the specific person you are thinking of right now. Not as a critique, as a mirror. The friend, the sibling, the person who is currently being drained by a dynamic they cannot name and do not yet have language for. They need this as much as you did. There is a question this video raised that it does not have space to answer. What happens after you stop reacting, when the old relationships have cleared and you are left alone with the shadow we talked about earlier? How do you integrate that part of yourself so it does not destroy the progress you have made? That is what the next video on this channel addresses directly. Watch it, because stopping the pattern is only the first half of the work. Machiavelli was right about the world. Jung was right about the soul. And the truth that sits between them is this: you cannot be good until you are whole. And you cannot be whole as long as you are terrified of being the villain in someone else's story. Are you ready to be misunderstood if it means finally belonging to yourself? Tell me in the comments. And think of one relationship, one specific person, one specific dynamic, where you have been performing niceness that is costing you something real. You do not have to name them, just name the pattern. Because the first act of ending the cycle is being able to put a sentence around what the cycle actually is. Silence is not empty. It is full of the answers you have been running from. It is time to stop running.